Hi, I'm Sandro and I'm here with my colleague Matt to talk about how we passed our AWS certifications and why you should too. I am a consultant at the Scale Factory, a cloud infrastructure consultancy and AWS advanced consulting partner, and I hold the AWS Solutions Architect Professional, the CSOPS Administrator Associate, and the Security Specialty certifications.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm also a consultant at the Scale Factory. I've recently joined the hiring team here so I can share my perspectives on how I evaluate candidates who have certifications. I've recently recertified my AWS Solutions Architect Professional, which I did during lockdown, and as well as that I've taken my Kubernetes Certified Administrator and the Terraform Associate certifications.
In this presentation, we are going to give you an overview of AWS certifications, talk about the benefits associated to AWS certifications, techniques and resources to prepare for the exam, and some practicalities before concluding. Here, I want to give you an overview of all the AWS certifications available, as well as the recommended certification path. At the bottom of the certification stack, we have the foundational certification, and in particular, the Cloud Practitioner certification. This certification is good for anyone starting with the AWS Cloud in a junior role and gives you an overview of the key services in AWS and the basic knowledge of AWS infrastructure, as well as security and billing. At the Scale Factory, we also have project managers and salespeople who have this certification, and I would definitely recommend it to people in a non-technical role, as well as junior engineers. The next level in the stack is the associate level, and in here we have the Solutions Architect certification, the CSOPS Administrator certification, and the Developer certification. The Solutions Architect certification is geared towards solutions architects and focuses more on AWS architecture and design principles. The CSOPS Administrator certification is aimed at people in operation like sysadmins. At the moment, this is the only certification which contains a practical exam lab as part of the exam. All the other certification exams are in the form of multiple choice questions. In the CSOPS exam, a third of the exam is a set of practical tasks that you need to perform via the AWS console or the command line. Finally, the developer certification is aimed at developers and focuses more on cloud-based app services and serverless architecture. AWS recommends at least 1 year experience with AWS for taking the certifications at the associate level. The next level in the stack is the professional level, and in here we have the Solutions Architect Professional, often referred to as SA Pro, and the DevOps Engineer Professional. You can see in the slide the path that is leading towards the SA Pro or the DevOps Pro. The SA Pro focusing more on architecture, while the DevOps Pro focusing more on development and operation, but there is a certain overlap between the two certifications. Note that a few years ago, AWS removed any prerequisite to get the professional certifications. Before, you needed to have the associate certification before taking the exam for the professional certification. So now we can go immediately for the professional certification if you like. AWS recommends at least 2 years of professional experience with AWS to take a professional exam. The next category of certification is what AWS calls the specialty certifications. This type of certification focuses on a specific segment of the AWS cloud like networking, data analytics, databases, machine learning, and security. There is an additional specialty certification that AWS is about to launch, which is SAP on AWS. All these specialty certifications are great if you want to specialize on a specific aspect of the AWS cloud. AWS recommends at least 1 or 2 years of experience in the specialty area. To get more info about the different certifications, I'll give you a link at the end of the presentation to the official AWS certification page and the link to a short ebook with an overview of AWS certifications. Let's talk about benefits of getting certified. From the point of view of individuals, you can have a better job opportunities and salary with an AWS certification. AWS certified engineers are in high demand in the job market. For example, AWS consultancy partners like the Scale Factory need to have a certain amount of AWS certifications in order to retain their AWS consultancy status and move to the next consulting tier. So they are big recruiters of AWS certified engineers. Another reason is professional growth. For example, if you want to deepen your AWS knowledge and progress your career. Finally, you might want to be a role model in your team and become the AWS go-to expert in your organization, upskill your team and motivate other colleagues to get certified. There are also benefits from the point of view of employers. As an employer, you can identify skilled IT professionals via AWS certifications for recruiting purposes, internal mentoring, and for career progression.
I'd also like to talk about some of the reasons why people might not take certifications or might think that they're not for them. The first one being that they don't think they have the time or money to study for them. Most employers are going to be able to help with your certification, whether it's by funding it or allowing you to study on the job. Some companies, like the Scale Factory, have a dedicated policy about giving employees time to continue their professional development. At Scale Factory, we have 10 days a year we can spend on whatever professional development we like, and anytime we pass a certification, we get awarded bonus days to encourage us to do more of them. Even if your company doesn't have a policy like that, consider asking your manager for some time every day to study, whether it's half an hour, and if it's directly relevant to your role, I think you'll find they'll be quite amenable. Even if your employer isn't helping at all, I still think AWS certs have an incredible return on investment. So if you're self-funding, you can get a Udemy course for the SA Pro for $13. Some practice tests are going to cost you another $20, $30. And the exam itself for the SA Pro is going to be worth $300. So all in all, you're going to spend a few $100s, but if you pass that exam, you're going to notice a much bigger boost to your salary than you've invested in that monetary cost. Some people are scared that they don't think they're ready, or they think they're going to fail the exam, or they don't think the exams are for you. There's an exam for most people, so the SA Pro is the highest for the Solution Architects track, but the Cloud Practitioner is suitable for entry-level people or people just starting out, or even non-technical people. So at the Scale Factory, our project managers and our client engagement managers have taken and passed the Cloud Practitioner, just so they have an idea what we're all talking about. Passing any exam is going to give you a voucher that gives you 50% off your next exam. So if you're worried about failing one, you can always take the exam that's one lower down that. Say you're thinking about taking the SA Pro, you can take the SA Associate. If you pass that, you should feel confident that you will do if you're trying to take the SA Pro. If you pass that, then you'll get a voucher for 50% off your next exam, and that can actually be more cost efficient than just going for the exam that you want. So the Cloud Practitioner exam currently costs $100, the SA Associate is $150, and the SA Pro is $300. So a 50% off your SA Pro is worth $150 to you. If you don't think it's worth going through all this time and effort to get the certification, I disagree. I think they're incredibly valuable in the market. I would dampen that with that they're not magic. If you just study the questions until you can pass the exam, if you pass all 8 of them, it's not going to guarantee you a 6-figure job. If you are taking the time to engage in the material, understand it, and use that to bolster your existing experience, you're going to have a skill set which is very valuable in this market, and you're going to be able to prove it to someone who might have a lot of applicants that you're a higher quality. I think that's definitely going to reflect in the offers and the salary offers that you receive.
Here I want to give you a list of study resources that can help you preparing for an AWS certification exam. And then I'll let Matt give you his advice on techniques on how to use some of these resources. The first resource I want to mention is video courses, since they are geared towards getting the certification you need. I personally used a Cloud Guru and Udemy video courses in the past, but there are plenty of other providers too. Other video training I can recommend is the one provided by AWS via their recently rebranded Skill Builder library. In particular, I want to single out the exam readiness course, which prepares you to sit an AWS certification exam. If you have never done an exam before, take this free course as it gives you lots of information about the mechanics of an AWS exam as well as a mock-up questions. I'd also recommend reInvent videos as they give you a deep dive on a specific service. I personally like reading books, and I use the official study guide published by Wiley for the CSOPS exam. It was a good book and also contained practice questions, mock exams, and additional resources like flashcards. If you have worked with AWS and you are then familiar with the AWS documentation, which you should be using on a regular basis. AWS white papers are also a great source of information. In particular, focus on those white papers which are mentioned as recommended reading for the certification that you want to take. And finally, I want to mention some resources for hands-on practice, as nothing can replace practical experience. The more you use AWS in real use cases, the better you'll get. But if you have gaps on some AWS services and you want to learn them in a practical way, AWS provides hands-on labs that you can follow. Finally, practice your exam as much as you can. Video courses and books provide you with mock exams, and you can also buy practice exams from AWS. There are sometimes free vouchers for these mock exams, as well as practice exams from Tutorials Dojo, Udemy, and WizLab. I definitely recommend the practice exams from Tutorials Dojo for the professional exams, as they are very close to what you get in the real exam.
I've settled into a routine of how I study for certifications and exams, and it varies a little depending on how much I know about the area. If I don't feel like I know the area very well, it's something new to me, my first port of call is always a video series that's specifically designed for that exam. These offer quite a lot of structure, which makes it easy to do a little chunk each day without feeling lost, and it also is motivating to see my progress through the course. These normally tell you everything you need to know for the exam, but no more, which means they can be quite time efficient. I normally watch them at quite a fast playback speed and skip videos already when I feel I already understand the content. And my goal here is to try and understand everything that's going to be on the exam. I don't necessarily have the ability to answer all the questions, but I know all the areas that I need to focus on. And this is my baseline. If I already had a good baseline, so for example, if I was recertifying for an exam that I've already taken, I might skip this step and go straight to the next one where I'm taking practice quizzes. I always take practice quizzes very early in the process, way before I'm ready to sit the actual exam, and I'll get lots of questions wrong, and that's fine. What I'm looking for here is a list of areas where I know that what I know is good enough, and a list of areas where I need to focus on improving if I'm going to pass. I like to use a third-party website called WizLabs for this. They are cheaper than taking the AWS practice exam, the official one. They also have many exams, so you can repeat this process more often, and they give quite good feedback as well. Once I have the areas that I need to focus on, I like to use something called the Feynman technique, and if you haven't heard of it, it's definitely worth looking into more than I'm going to talk about it. But the gist is, try and explain a concept as simply as you can, as if to a child or to a non-expert. If you can do this about a concept, there's a good chance that you understand it quite well. If you struggle to explain it simply, or you find yourself relying on jargon, or you don't quite understand what you're saying, it's a good sign that you need to go back to the documentation and read more about it. In my recent exam was my recert of the SA Pro, and I was struggling with some of the hybrid networking questions as I'd never worked in a hybrid environment. Asking myself simple questions like, what is a transit gateway? Or what's the difference between a transit gateway and a direct connect gateway? Really highlighted that I didn't know. I would read the AWS documentation to find the answer, and I prefer to read AWS documentation at this point rather than going back to the video series. I like to search through the Doctor Searchable, and so I don't have to scrub through a video to find the piece of information that I'm looking for. And also, as I said, the exams tell you, the video series tends to tell you everything you need to know and no more, so sometimes they might just say, just remember that this is the case, rather than give you a deep, intuitive understanding of it. Because the AWS exams are multiple choice, having an intuitive understanding of what the service is and how it's supposed to work is often enough to answer the question. They like to write questions so that all the possibilities look plausible. So for example, how do you store something in S3 or RDS? Now, if all you know about those services is there's something to do with storage, then you wouldn't know how to answer that question. If you know that S3 is object storage, and you know that RDS is a transactional database, and you know what the differences between those two are, then you've probably got enough information to quickly eliminate one. Object storage just can't do that, so that I can eliminate the S3 answer, it must be RDS, and similar. So I find this is quite an effective way to study for exams. I'm just going to talk briefly about the practicalities of taking the exam at home, so a remote proctored exam, or going to a test center. The benefits of doing it at home for me was that I had a comfortable environment, so I have a nice chair and monitors and keyboard and mouse that I know and like. I get to reuse those, and I also found it was more flexible, being able to book an exam at any time of the day or night rather than when the test center is open, and I was able to reschedule my home exam with only 24 hours notice. You may be able to do that for a test center as well, but it seems likely to me that a remote proctored exam will be more flexible. The downside of doing it at home is you have to make your environment suitable for the exam, which can be quite time consuming. You need to read the requirements the provider gives you, so they might not allow multiple monitors, they might not allow anything on the walls, you might have to declutter things or move things out of the room temporarily in order to take the exam. If you go to a test center, then all of that will be taken care of for you. You won't need to install anything on your laptop, you won't need to have a webcam, you just go to the test center and that will be provided. So it's potentially less effort and there's fewer requirements. The downside of the test center is you have less control over the environment. You might not like the keyboard or the seat that you're on. I've been into a test center where there was a meeting room next door and I could hear them having quite an animated discussion and found that quite distracting. So I prefer doing exams at home in the future. I'll talk a little bit about the hiring perspective. So when I see a CV with lots of certs on it, what do I think? What do I like to see? This is very personal choices. It's not that this is what I like to see or prefer. I'm not going to throw your CV away if you don't do exactly these things. Yeah. So I like seeing the certifications that match people's practical experience. So if you've been working with AWS for 5 years, I'm not going to really be that impressed by a cloud practitioner certification. And if you've been working with AWS for 6 months and you're applying for a junior level, I'm going to be a bit suspicious that you've managed to get an SA Pro if you have that on your CV, that you've really understood all the material in order to operate at that kind of level. I like to see a variety of certifications. We get a lot of applicants with 5, 6, 7, 11 AWS certs. I think if you've got the time and money and energy to do that many certifications, I would recommend that you spread them out amongst other providers. So think about getting a Terraform cert from HashiCorp, or if you do anything with containers, then get something from Docker or Kubernetes. If you're a developer who's trying to move into DevOps, then maybe get something from the Linux Foundation that proves you know how a Linux system works. Consider finding 1 or 2 exams or certifications from AWS that really match your practical experience, and then look at other providers for other things that would supplement that nicely, rather than just getting every AWS certification under the sun. I also like seeing certifications that were taken a while ago, so don't hold out until you're looking for a new job. If you took an exam 2 years ago, it means you've got 2 years of practical experience using and understanding that content, and you're going to have a much better grasp of it than you've just learned the theory enough to take the exam. Yeah, so that's what I like to see when I'm looking for certs, when I'm hiring, and that leads us to we're hiring. This is a fantastic job. I really like it here. If you do anything with AWS at the kind of senior to mid to senior level, we could find a role that's suitable for you. There's got quite a wide salary range there. My favorite things about this job, these aren't the only benefits, but these are the things I like it, is it's fully remote and flexible, so I work entirely from home and I can choose my hours as long as I meet my obligations. We've got really incredible colleagues here. I've learned so much since I've started, and I feel so much better at my job since I've started working here. And because the caliber of the staff is so high, it's a really high trust, low stress environment. People just get trusted to get on with it and get empowered a lot and get given a lot of responsibility, and I really like that. If you think about working for us, the best place to go is our careers page. We have all the information that you'll need, what our interview process looks like, what our timelines for starting new candidates look like, what all the benefits are. We've put loads of detail into this because we know that starting and finding a new job is hard, and you don't want to do a bunch of interviews for a job that might turn out to be not interesting to you. So if you check out our careers page, there's absolutely loads of information there. Also, our blog has recently had one post from a consultant about what it's like a day in the life of the Scale Factory, and there's another one about the hiring process and what it's like to be onboarded to us. So they're both really valuable if you're seeing what it would like to join us. And that is the end of our presentation.
Yes, Matt, we reach the end of this presentation. We hope you find it useful, and hopefully we convince you to get an AWS certification. Now, choose the best certification for your career, start studying and book your AWS certification exam. Here are some resources and links we mentioned during these presentations. Do not hesitate to get in touch and tell us about your certification journey. Thank you.
So that was my colleagues Matt and Sandro. I didn't actually ask Matt to plug the job quite so vociferously there, but I guess I do pay him, so it's nice that he's done that, which is great. He mentioned we're looking for mid to senior hires. We will be hiring juniors this year as well. We will have room on our roster to support, I think, a team of 3 juniors in sort of quick succession. So if you're earlier in your career and you're interested in working for the Scale Factory, love to hear from you. I'm going to stop shilling the company now and bring Sandro into the call. Thanks for joining us, Sandro. Thanks for your contribution there. I see you've shared the links from that last slide in the channel, which is awesome. I guess my question for you really is what was the most difficult cert that you've done, and what are you looking forward to doing next?
It's definitely the solutions architect professional. That was a tough one, both the preparation and the exam. I remember on the exam, which I passed just a couple of months ago, I'd used every single minute of the exam for just finished 30 seconds, I think, before the allocated time, and it wasn't the case for other certifications I did. So the professional exams are definitely the toughest one, in my opinion. Even just for reading the questions, it will take you several minutes just to really understand the questions, because they're definitely more complex than the one that you can find on the associate exams, or even on the security. I did the security specialty exam, and I found it less difficult, although still quite challenging compared to the solutions architect professional.
Yeah. And you're. I mean, although your English is, of course, excellent, you're not English isn't your first language, right? So, do they provide you with sort of options if you are? Can you take the exam in Italian? I don't even know whether that's the case.
I think you can take some exams actually in Italian. This has been fairly new. I think I can dig out the links, but I think there are some exams probably at the associate level or lower than the professional, where you can take them in another language. Definitely there is for Chinese, I think, and Japanese, but I think I've seen recently announcements for other European languages taking exam in French or Italian as well. Definitely for the associate exam. I might dig out the link for that. But the good thing is, if English is not your first language, you can ask for what is called an accommodation. So you can get 30 extra minutes of your exam by simply demonstrating that English is not your first language. I personally prefer to take exams in English as well, because this is the working language for me. So it would feel a little bit odd actually to sometimes read these things in another language other than English, because I'm definitely going to use then all the terminology in English. So for me, it was good to take it in English, even if I had the option. But bear in mind, if English is not your first language, then you can ask for these 30 minutes. Just remember to do it before you book the exam, as apparently you cannot get this accommodation after you book the exam. So you first ask for the accommodation when you log in your account, and then you get the accommodation, and then you book the exam. So make sure you follow this procedure, as they cannot add it afterwards.
Yeah. The other thing that I learned fairly early on, I think, is that because they check your identity before you take the exam. Your name as you sign up for the exam has to match the name that is in your identity document. So my legal name is Jonathan, but I signed up because I use John as my sort of professional name. I had to get that changed, and you have to do that before the exam as well. Otherwise, you might get unstuck. And that's particularly true if you're doing an online proctored exam, because the online proctoring is a little bit more following the rules, if you like, or quite dogmatic. Whereas in a test center in person, usually the person there is like, oh yeah, obviously John is short for Jonathan, just go ahead. So bear that in mind if you use a name that's different from the name on your identity or your legal name. So worth bearing in mind. What's next for you, Sandro? What are you going to take next as your
I think he's the DevOps professional, simply because I have to recertify my associate, SysOps associate. As this year is 3 years since I took the SysOps associate. And when you go for the higher level exam, which is in your path, so in my case is the DevOps professional for the SysOps professional, then you can automatically get recertified also for the associate exam. So by taking my DevOps professional in the next months, and if I pass it, I will get the DevOps professional certification, but I will also automatically recertify for the SysOps associate. So you get basically a recertification and a new certification with just a single exam. So definitely, if you are at the time where you need to recertify, if your certification is reaching the 3 years end of life, think about going for the professional exam, because you will get basically 2 certifications for the price of one.
Yep, gotcha. There's a bit of chat in the Twitch stream, which or the Twitch. I always keep saying the Twitch stream. This is the Twitch stream. I'm on the Twitch stream. There's some chat in the Twitch chat that we'll go to. Yo-Yo, who is one of our organisers of this meetup, who herself has done quite a lot of certifications. I think didn't realise that she could get accommodations for non-English speaking taking of that exam, which good might be useful to know. Yo-Yo is not herself a first language English speaker. John says, recent this Twitter thread about how invasive or runner's root most of the proctoring software is. How is the test partners for this? What operating system did you take your exam on, Sandro, when you did that remotely?
So I'm quite interested in this discussion, because I'm a big fan of going to a test center.
Right, so yours were all in person.
Yeah, I only took the Terraform exam from this very room, and I didn't like the experience. There was a problem at some point. And this is exactly the reason why, personally, but this is my personal view. And I know Matt has got a completely different view, as you've heard from the presentation, because he prefers the proctor exam. Yep. For me, I can give you my point of view is that I prefer the test center, because it puts me in the exam mode. Even if I have to go to the exam center, but even the act of going, it's like a real exam as I used to do them when I was at school or at university. So it puts me in that mood, if you want to. But also, I don't have to install anything on my machine, and the software that you have to install is basically something that is spines on your computer and controls your camera. So I wouldn't feel particularly at ease, especially installing such a software on my work machine. And also, you have to make sure that your room is as they want it. So basically, you have to remove many things from your room. They ask you to inspect the room. You have to make sure that your internet connection is fine. So if you have a drop in the internet connection, it could be then a big problem. I had this during the Terraform exam. I don't know if it was my software, my internet connection, or their software, which crashed, one of the two, but it was a bit of it was just an additional worry that I had. So I personally prefer to go to a test center, but I can see advantages also of going to the proctor, to doing a proctor exam. You do it from the comfort of your home. You use your keyboard, your mouse, And so it might be a more welcoming environment for you, an environment you are used to. So some people might prefer the proctor exam, but yeah, watch out at the operating system you have, because I think there might be issues with, especially with installing the software on a Linux machine.
Yes, yeah. So I've taken my recent exam. So for those of you listening, I have the SA Pro and the Security Specialty certs, and the DevOps Pro actually. And I recertified 2 of those recently. And I did that here in person on my dining table, which is just behind me there. So I'm a Mac user. The software that they send, this is I think this is PSI rather than Pearson VUE. Just off the top of my head, I think our team has had some problems with Pearson VUE. Proctor's not showing up or whatever, and I think that's generally true. I hear that from some of the other ambassadors as well. But PSI, they give you an application to run on your Mac, and it doesn't need any root credentials, but it does make sure that you're not running anything other than that application. So you have to close other things down, and then it just gives you a full screen browser experience, and there's a sort of embedded video camera recording and screen for the proctor to see you. There's a phone app that you use as well, or a web page on the phone where they ask you to take a photograph of your workstation in front of you and to the sides and behind you, so that they can see that you don't have other people in the room, you don't have cheat sheets plastered all over your walls, that sort of thing. They ask you if you're going to be in a quiet environment, make sure that no one's going to walk in on you, and you have to take a photograph of your identity document and then a photograph of your face so that they can line the two up. It's not very onerous. Like I didn't find it too invasive. I know that other people maybe feel a little differently about that sort of stuff, but for me it was much easier than going to the test center. And certainly when I did one of those, we were in full-on pandemic, and so I couldn't do that anyway. So I actually prefer doing it at home. I believe the Windows experience is similar. I'm reasonably confident that you don't need to provide any super user access to your machine. As Tim on the chat here, is one of our colleagues, says, he actually runs he does the exams on Ubuntu, and he does that in a separate user account in order to protect himself and I guess the company's data and our customers' data against the test center doing something that isn't quite right with their software. So there are ways of working around it. I think if you're avoiding doing the exam because you don't like that environment, I think maybe you might be avoiding it for other reasons as well as that. But you can of course go and do that in person at a proctor. Jabbersoft says, I also liked having a pen and paper during the exam, which you can't do during the remote proctor. That is correct. Yes, if you're at a test center, they give you a pen and paper and they'll take it off you at the end of the exam as well. You have to agree not to take questions away with you, obviously. So hopefully that's useful context for those of you who are thinking about or worrying about taking that exam. Do use the PSI option over Pearson VUE, because I think you'll have a better time of it. I can't speak about what their software is like, but the PSI stuff is perfectly fine. Do you do any kind of studying with other people, Sandro? Is studying for you a solitary activity, or do you have other people kind of encouraging you to get the exams? Any group activity around your practice? Yeah,
we do actually at the Scale Factory, and I encourage to do this. At other companies, if you're listening to and you want to bring some best practices, we do have a study group every fortnight where we discuss a service or a technology and I found these study groups really interesting because, first of all, I tend to read a little bit about it before, and I remember they helped me just to identify some of the services that I wasn't familiar with, that then I found on the exam, or I had to study in order to prepare for the exam. So we created a study group at the Scale Factory, and something very easy that you can do with your colleagues as well. And it could be where a way to share knowledge. And there was a question also before in the chat about what is the motivation of taking a certification other than getting a new job. What if you're happy in your job? And well, this is, I think, it could be a very good reason is that you could be a role model for upskilling your team and motivating other people for taking these certifications. And having these informal study groups could be a good way of upskilling your team members, especially if you are leading a team and you need AWS knowledge. And we know how difficult it is to recruit good AWS engineers these days. So it's definitely something that an idea that you can use in your own company for upskilling, but also help other people with doing and studying for their certification exams.
Yeah, no, that's good context. Yeah, I mean, as you know, Sandro, but maybe others don't. I have not done any kind of hands-on AWS for our clients for probably 3 or 4 years now, and I keep my exams current as a way to sort of expose myself to knowledge about other parts of the ecosystem that I haven't used before. So my kind of experience comes from sort of just on the sort of cusp of Fargate, that sort of timing. But I like to be able to sort of talk about the rest of the platform. It's why I do things like reInvent and keep an eye on the announcements. But taking the certifications is valuable for that as well. Also, because I'm part of the ambassador program, the partner ambassador program, I need an SA Pro in order to stay in that group of people and get access to the benefits of that, which include, incidentally, this rather snazzy ambassador lunchbox that I picked up at reInvent. It's a big heavy Pyrex thing I had to bring back in my suitcase. So I keep my exams current so that I can get lunchboxes at reInvent, apparently. So Jonathan's asking here, on the SysOps practical test, are you on a CLI with AWS --help available, or are you expected to have the exact commands memorized? So I haven't done any of the hands-on exams. I don't know if you have either, Sandro.
No.
I'm given to believe it's more command line, more console-based than CLI based, but I'm not actually sure. If there's anybody who's on the chat right now who has done one of those sort of hands-on exams, I don't know how actually in circulation they are yet, but a lot of them will go that way. Maybe I know Tim is an SME for some of the exams, a subject matter expert. He's sort of contributed to the questions that they ask in those exams. I don't know if Tim's done a hands-on one, but I suspect it might look a little bit like the Kubernetes certified.
Yeah, I think it's definitely task-based, but I don't know if you can just do it via the console or you are requested to know the commands via the CLI.
Yeah, Tim's saying he thinks it's the web console, but he also hasn't seen that for the exam. How do you feel about that, Sandra? How do you feel about doing an exam that is more task-based than sort of memory-based almost?
It's good. I like it, and I think it's a good mix. Especially at the moment, only the SysOps Associate is the only exam where you can have this mix of practical and theory based. Sometimes the AWS exams are a little bit criticized because you get these very long questions, and sometimes the most difficult thing in the question is understanding what they want from you as the answer, and sometimes some of these questions, I don't know, the difference in the answer could be just a single word, and you have the feeling this is done just to trick me, really. And whereas I think introducing a more practical element, especially for the SysOps or the DevOps, maybe in the future, I think is a good thing. It's a good mix of theory and practice.
Yeah. I think I'm in favour of it, but maybe slightly more nervous about it because I don't do a lot of the hands-on stuff myself these days. I can kind of go and learn the things and take the exam, but I don't do quite as much pushing of buttons in the console. But I guess we'll see how that goes. It'll probably suit different exam exam styles probably suit different people, but interesting to see them head in that general direction. So great. I think that's all we have time for, Sandro. Thanks for your contribution this evening, joining us on the chat. Sorry that Matt couldn't join and back you up on some of this stuff, but these things happen. But yeah, thanks very much, Sandro. I'll see you at work tomorrow, I guess. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So that was Sandro, who has done great work on his exam stuff, and actually a lot of the Scale Factory team have invested in their certification paths. Partly because I asked them to, but partly also because I think they see the benefit of it in terms of kind of ongoing development. If you are working in a business where your colleagues are perhaps not as interested in certification, and you would like to join a cohort of people who are studying towards a particular exam, then there are options available to you. Our Discord for this meetup group, we have a certification channel, so do join the Discord and drop in there if you like someone to hold you to account and check on your progress and that sort of thing. Maybe you could find a buddy on there to do that for you. You could even ask me to do that, or I can't guarantee I'd do a great job of it because I'm not studying for anything at the moment. But you might want to do that if you don't have a support network elsewhere. Sandro has shared some of the links to his that were in his presentation in the Twitch chat. This slide deck will also be available on the Scale Factory speaker deck page. So if Sandro's still paying attention here, maybe you can share that in the channel. Otherwise, I will do that on our Discord later on, because you might find that useful. And of course, the sessions tonight, we record all of our meetup groups and put them up on YouTube when we're done. So as long as this recording has worked out fine, then that will be available to watch later on this evening, probably once I've cut it up and put it together.